Hello. Good afternoon. Nice to see you. Nice. The talk today is called What Should Not Be Talked About If You're a Non-Duality Teacher. Lisa Cairns, Non Duality. But I won't start this talk until I've done the meditation. So I won't start for about another 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. Yeah. I always like to do a meditation first. Yeah, I can see the video is getting really stuck, but I'll sort that out when I do the meditation. I'm just going to put it on lower. I'm not sure why it's getting so stuck. I have good internet, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Video. Yeah. And then I'm just going to, settings. Just going to turn that down as well. Output 180. Okay, we shall begin with the meditation. So I always like to do meditation at the beginning of talks. Getting distracted by the technicalities. So I always like to do meditation at the beginning of talk because I think it's really good to settle the person down. I don't think it's anything to do with becoming enlightened or superpowers or transforming into nirvana, whatever story we normally like to tell ourselves. I think that meditation for the majority of people helps settle down the mind, body, and bring it more back to equilibrium. But I don't think that's true for everyone as well. So for some people, meditation isn't so good, and I leave it to you to work that out if it's not so good for you. If you find that meditation is particularly disturbing, then I would recommend something like yoga or something physical for people. But that also might not be right. I am no guru in this matter. I am simply someone talking from my opinion and what I've experienced through years and years of practicing spirituality. And so what I mean by the human is I don't mean that there is a separate person inside these bodies. I mean by being human, the karma of the body, the habits and the conditions of the body. So somebody might have a particular way of seeing things and a particular way of thinking. Maybe they have a predisposition towards worry and worry thoughts. So worrying about what they've got to do at work tomorrow, if the boss will be around, if this will happen or that will happen. That would be a predisposition of the body. It's not actually somebody that's inside the body experiencing. It's a habit of the body. And meditation can become a new habit of the body, where meditation is about focusing the personal attention on this present moment. Most of the time. Sometimes it's about evoking things and doing all different types of things. So, but most of the time it's about focusing on something, particularly the present moment. So it's giving the body a new habit, which is so simple. But there's some minds that are so strong that meditation actually has the opposite effect and causes them to overthink and go into trauma. So it's not recommendable for everybody. That is the disclaimer, the warning. Boop, 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 boop. But for some, it begins to work well. It's never normally comfortable in the beginning stages because your predisposition as a person is to be a doer. And so meditation can seem like a non-doing, even if it's focusing on the present moment. and the body wants to actually do things that will benefit it and give it dopamine rushes predominantly. So browsing the internet, going onto those video loops in YouTube, those short ones where you're like boop, 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 and you get these hits of dopamines and likes and all these types of things. And so meditation can be quite painful because it's not feeding that dopamine rush. So the mind is like, what next? What next? What next? Yes. So this is what meditation is good for. I'm not recommending it to somebody. I'm not saying I am a somebody and you are a somebody and you as that somebody has free will and choice and should meditate. I see that this body-mind is speaking and that body-mind is listening, and there might be a new habit that forms of meditation in that body-mind mechanism. But I don't see it as somebody's free will and choice, because who would that be? So non-duality always questions the validity of this separate identity. But there's habits of the body, just like I could get you into a habit of cooking a cake or doing particular exercises like weightlifting. And I could teach you how to do it properly so it's most beneficial. So, and it's I teach, but it's not really. There is a communication here and then an absorption of that or not. And then the person says, I did it. I followed her instructions, and now I am the #1 weightlifter in the whole universe. Not just the world, the universe. Yes, the universe. So there's different meditations that I recommend. The first meditation is the mindfulness of breathing. It's from the foundation of the Western Buddhist order, which now has a different name, but I can't say that because it's new to me and my dyslexic brain is like beep, beep every time it goes to be said. Something like tarantula something, a tarantula. And it's called the mindfulness of breathing. If I ever get very successful, I'm sure they'll come after me and sue me for ever recommending this. But just if you are listening, I don't charge any money for these talks, so how am I benefiting? Well, I'm sure you can find lots of ways. But anyway, the mindfulness of breathing is a technique which I'm sure they didn't make up and has come from thousands of generations being passed on verbally from guru to disciple. And that is putting your attention on your breath and counting your breath. Very complex. You have to count your breath up to number 10, and when you get to number 10, you got to start again. Very complex exercise. 10, start again. So every time you go in, you count 1. Another breath in, you ascend, you count 2. Then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, so you count to 10. And then you go back to 0. And you just keep doing that. That's it. That's the whole exercise. No beating yourself up if you end up at 926. No shaming yourself. No chastising yourself. Everything is a celebration. Whenever you remember, it's not like, oh God, I went over 10 again. It's like, yes, I remembered. Woohoo! You want to give yourself positive conditioning, not shameful conditioning, like I'm doing something wrong all the time. It's positive. Every time you meditate, it is like, woohoo! The birds are singing. The angels are flapping their wings. Whew, I'm making myself hot. Gonna have to calm myself down. This is what happens when I don't do my U streams once a week. It all gets built up and then there's a big explosion. So, yes, you want to do that. Okay, next meditation. Putting your attention in the I am or consciousness. You can't really ultimately do that if we define every word individually. But if you just take it as like a sense of what I mean, like a painting, like a poem, then you can begin to get a sense of that. So moving the attention into the original I am, the original consciousness. So putting your attention back into that which is looking, seemingly, or that sense of I am, which is the love, the emptiness or the love. You could try doing them simultaneously if you're a genius, and you can have two thoughts at the same time. For the rest of us, just pick one. Don't try to be the genius. Don't try and fake it with yourself. And then the third one is just sitting there and doing sweet FA, which I'm sure is a very rude thing to say. That was from my father. Yes, so just doing sweet FA, which means you don't do anything with your mind. You're not trying to do anything, manipulate anything. You're just sitting there and letting whatever thoughts want to come up. That's it. Anything. If, however, you're getting stuck in trauma or OCD thinking, just stop and go and do some yoga, do whatever. Browse the internet, anything, if you're getting stuck in OCD thinking, in any of those, or in traumatic thinking. And you have to look that up and find that definition for yourself as to what that is, because it's too much for me to explain now. I'll be here forever. The time I've explained those meanings, it'll be end of talk. Yeah. Okay, we shall begin. Here we go. Uh-oh. There has been an update on my computer and I don't know where music is. Oh, here we go. It was hiding. Okay. Hello, welcome back. Okay, so we shall begin with the talk. Let me just look to see what the title is again. Very exciting title. What should not be talked about if you're a non-duality teacher? Woohoo! What should not be talked about if you're a non-duality teacher? Genius title. Yeah, so, okay, first of all, before we go into the title, I'm going to talk about what non-duality is. But before that, I can hear the lady that helps me, Amelia, saying, advertise the retreat. I always forget to do these types of things. It's to advertise a retreat that's happening in the south of France in like 3 weeks, the 21st of May. 21st of May. Yeah, so you're welcome to come for the retreat. You can find it on my website. I'm most probably going to stop booking at 30 people, and I think we're at about 26 or 27 now, depending if you count me. Yeah. Okay. So what is non-duality? So before I can say what is it that most non-duality teachers should not talk about, I'm going to first of all talk about what non-duality is. Ooh, yeah. So for those of you that are new to these talks or don't really know what non-duality is, I'm going to start right from the beginning. And for those that are old, then you just have to, enjoy hearing the rerun. So when we are born into this world, when these bodies are born, there is no sense of, oh, hello, I'm Lisa. I am this baby. There is just awakeness, this radical awakeness, and the brain isn't working that much yet, and it's quite small, and it's not really perceiving time, so it can't really remember, like, I am the baby yesterday, I'm the baby now, and I'll be a baby tomorrow. It's just awake and conscious and not really having very strong thought processes. It's just like, where's the boob? Am I cold? I need to go for a poo-poo or a wee-wee. That's mostly its agenda, and it's not even thinking that, it's just response. Feed me! Poo-poo! Cold! Hot! And it's just radically alive. It doesn't have a sense of, this is my hand, and that is the world out there. Which, when you've been conditioned for many years to be, I am the body, that's so hard to imagine. There was this awakeness, this pure consciousness, without the sense of, I am something. The mind is so used to thinking of itself as subject-object, as separate. But the baby was just purely awake. And it doesn't mean that the baby doesn't experience pain. If the baby doesn't get its milk on time or get its poo-poo cleaned up, it really expresses its pain. So it's not about not having pain. This is about something prior to pain and pleasure. It's not in that loop. So there is this like awake presence that's right here and not separate from anything. So the baby doesn't have a sense of, I am looking from a baby at a ceiling. There is just ceiling happening. There is just air happening, space happening, sound happening, and not for anybody. It's just a happening. And we dismiss that because we're like, oh yeah, the poor baby, it's like, its brain, isn't working so well. It's a lower experience. Ours is a higher experience. And we dismiss that, and we don't even think about the fact that once we were and we didn't know who we were, and it wasn't an issue. It's an issue now, because what happens is as the baby begins to grow, even from birth, there is this indoctrination of you, me, you. There's this indoctrination. You. Aren't you a good boy? Aren't you a good girl? Aren't you a good non-binary child? You're just so sweet. All of these words are being thrown and the child is like, I am all these things, really? It doesn't think that straight away, but it grows like over years. And then also the ways in which the parents interactive, like we're always doing like non-verbal communication and informing the other of who they are through not speaking. You know, through responses, through actions, through glances. There's so much non-verbal communication going on, maybe more than there is verbal. So, you know, if it's a girl, maybe there is the non-verbal communication of more like they're less capable. I know we think, no, we wouldn't do this to our child, but sometimes inadvertently we do this to girls, of making them feel like they're less capable than a boy, or they're more delicate than a boy. Which could be, but also might not be. The boy might be more delicate than the girl. I know children where the girl is way more bigger and bulkier and expressive in those early years. So there can be so many non-verbal communications being thrown at that child. And so the child is trying to fit in and learn what it is in relationship to the other. Like, who am I to the other? And it wants to please the parents. So it's trying to form this sense of self in relation to another. Who am I in comparison to them? And I want to be the best one. I want to be the most lovable one. Again, this isn't conscious, but this is being communicated. You have to be the best. And you get a lot of parents that are like that, like wanting the best children or fearing that they don't have the best children. These subtle ideas. So then as the baby's brain grows and there's more recognition of this body begins to adopt to this idea of, I am somebody and I must be good. Good and bad are really important for identification. This is one of our fundamental beliefs. I am good or I am bad. So the child grows, and then at 2 or 3 or 4 years old, it begins to have this notion that I am a baby or I am a young child and I need to be good in order to be happy. And so then it begins to develop these dynamics. And there can be all types of misfiring in that, because sometimes the child can get the impression, I need to be bad in order to be happy. I need to be the bad boy. Bad girl. Bad non-binary. Which the parent inadvertently does, like praises the child accidentally when it does naughties, or doesn't give the child attention until it does a naughty. So I'm not saying it's all like that, but majority it's like, I want to be good. And I have to be good in order to be happy. And so the child isn't encouraged to find its flow and its uniqueness and recognize flow as freedom. Like when the child is just acting, just doing, just being, there is a natural flow and harmony to all of us. It's being taught that you have to be good to this idea of ourselves. This idea of what is good. And that will bring you happiness. And it's something in the future that you've got to work for. So to me, a really important thing to be teaching to your children would be to find their flow. So a lot of educationers in more Nordic countries, they teach children on the premise of play rather than on teaching the child to learn and remember. It's more following the child in their play and seeing where that play evolves to. So the idea is that if the child plays, it'll be naturally interested in learning, which is so true. I had some friends here a couple of weeks ago, and just looking at the children, they're so gagging and eager to learn. But it's just not maybe fun for the adults, like their learning is, it might not be so fun to teach them in that way. But in their play, they're naturally learning. Just in something like hide and seek, that's a learning game. What other games did they like playing? They enjoyed cooking. We did cooking with them, and particularly like touching it, like touching and making a mess. But yeah, touching, and they just want to play. And like one time we were by the river, and I thought it was so sweet. They just had an apple core, and they just got into this thing of like burying the apple core and unburying it. I mean, that's just learning so much if you think about it at that age. Like they're conceptualizing the idea of burying something and digging it up, and what it is to move that dirt, and what the dirt does to them, the fact that they end up filthy. And then they were washing the apple core off in the water. And then they were wanting to see what it would be like to float the apple core and then float their shoes in the river. And the parents were like, no, not the shoes. But I could get it. It's like, yeah, what happens if we put that shoe in the water? What will happen to it? That's learning. That's what play is. I'm not saying let your children do that. Like, you don't want to. I have really uncontrollable children. But it's just seeing this, like sitting in a class and repeating and learning all these dogmatic stuff is good for a child that has good memory, maybe, that has a mind which is about memorizing facts and numbers and spelling. But for the majority of the kids, it's not good, because they've got to find that inspiration in themselves to want to create, because that's what we are, as these beautiful, miraculous, creative beings. Anyway, I went off on one then, sorry. A bit passionate about education there. But the point is that what you want to be teaching children is their flow, and what it feels like to be in flow, because what it really feels like is you aren't there when you're in flow. There is a flow that's happening, and there's not this middle person judging it and saying what you should be. This middle person has a point to come up sometimes, to stop us doing really idiotic things, which we're all capable of. So I'm not saying ignore the logic, but like the kids wanting to put the shoes in the water. If you put your shoes in the water, they're more than likely going to sink and float away, and you won't get them back. So we need logic. But I can understand that flow of wanting to watch them float. I was totally, what would happen? Whose shoe would sink the quickest, and why is that? I mean, that's so much to learn in that. You don't need to sit in a classroom and learn facts that like kill a child or what. Who invented school? We all know that, factories, because they needed factory workers that had basic IQ in order to do factory work. And then it kind of became a thing. It's like, okay, now the adults work full time, and then we group, institutionalize, educate our kids. That's very wise. Then the adults can both be working, and the kids can be educated by one educator, 30 of them. Fantastic. This works perfectly. Then we've got both parents working for society. I mean, it does have good points in the sense that it stopped women just being the caregiver of kids. Like, it's given women the opportunity to have a career. But it's also like, yeah, sorry, off on my beeswax. Sorry to teachers out there or people that agree with the education system. I understand that there could be another view, and I'm not necessarily right. But anyway, in this system, it keeps indoctrinating the child, particularly in the education system, that you have to do things in order to be good. Rather than when you're in flow with something, you disappear and there's a natural sense of enjoyment. And it's not about achievement, it's not about getting, it's not about doing or being, it's about being in flow. And this is your happiness, this is your freedom, and this is what will make you a superb creator. We are taught that it is about being good and about being successful in the future. You learn now to be successful in the future. You do these things that make you feel uncomfortable now in order to be successful in the future. But this thing of success keeps getting further and further away. So it's like passing these tests, then passing more tests, then getting into college, university, passing more tests, then getting home, and then getting kids or a partner, and then getting kids, then earning money and having a particular style house. So it's like these lines of what is a good child keep getting further and further away. So you're never happy in the moment. It's always about the end. It's never about the journey, it's about the end. But we train ourselves in this society to be somebody that is going to achieve happiness in the future. Whereas non-duality suggests that happiness is your flow right now, right here, right now, right here. It's this beingness that is. And when you become yourself, or more yourself on the human level, so you stop trying to be something for the future and be yourself more radically now, it's not about getting over all habits and conditions, it's more losing the attachment to this idea of yourself and just becoming more authentically what it is now. So if you're sad, you're sad. If you're angry, you're angry. It's not about being perfect. If you feel like creating, you create. You also have the logical mind that's like, yeah, if I don't do any cleaning, then I'm going to end up in a shit field. So I have to do cleaning sometimes. So it's not having mind. Use the mind, but it's also this other part of us, this part of flow. And to me, the flow is not being identified with this idea of yourself in the future, and this idea of yourself being happy in the future. And it's not this kind of like seeking to become. It is being what you are right now. So when you're doing the washing up, you're really washing up. When you're cooking dinner, you're really cooking dinner. When you're walking the dog, you're really walking the dog. It sounds so simple, eh? But we grow these like momentous identities that have so much attachment to outcome that we kind of live through this fog of ourselves constantly, like, you gotta be this, you gotta be that, you gotta be this, you gotta be that. Got to be successful, gotta have a really nice home, got to have 2.4 kids, got to do this, got to do that, got to do this, got to do that. And it's like the suppression of the person. It's like a complete disconnection from the body in a lot of cases. Like you just become a head of your imagination of yourself. And this often produces like lots of worry thought, lots of anxiety, because you're kind of living in the mind, and in a way you've given lots of credence to an instrument that is designed to look for problems in order to fix it and make it better. So you kind of have become somebody that is a problem, because you're not really the mind, you're not really the thoughts, that's just an idea. But ideas are generated in order to be creative and to fix something. So then it's like you become a problem that needs to be fixed. And it's all imagination. Who is this you? Yes, there is habits and conditions, like Lisa has particular habits and conditions. Like she, particular way of being, which you most probably all recognise to be me, more than I most probably recognise to be me, because you can't really view yourself from the outside. I forgot what I was saying that in line of. It's about becoming something. I forgot. Yeah, I have to just go in the middle somewhere. I don't really know where I got to. So we have these identities, and some people call it the ego. I don't tend to call it the ego, because Ramesh Balsekar talked about the ego in the positive. You get all these different teachers, and Roger, I think, will talk about it in the positive. I'm not sure, but I suspect he will. Yeah. So we create this identity, and then we hold on to this identity, because at the base of it, what it fears and what it's like tapped into is that fear of death and the fear of not being loved and being abandoned. So this identity becomes strong because we're afraid. Like, who are you without that right now? And what do? We're so used to riding that wave of do, that adrenaline, that excitement of becoming something. I'm going to become successful tomorrow. I'm going to become rich tomorrow. I'm going to become lovable tomorrow. I'm going to lose weight tomorrow. I'm going to be Marilyn Monroe tomorrow. I'm going to get a new dress tomorrow. I'm going to get a new car tomorrow. Pardon me. I am going to become. So all these things that you are going to become. And then that's happiness. And then there's a terror of not being that. Like a real terror. So freedom is this collapsing of seeking and this going back to what you were prior to being born and as a very young baby, and what you are still now but just forgotten. So it's this awakening of who you are, which is this alive presence that's right now and free. And that's not based on being good or bad or right or wrong or rich or poor. It's free. Like who you are right now is free. And who you are isn't a body-mind that's in relationship with the world. It's not something. Who you are is what is. It's what you've always had. You had it as a baby, you had it when you were at preschool, you had it when you were at school, at college, at university, in your dark days, in depression, in freedom and in joy, in listening to this. And that is this moment. There is always this moment, and this moment is awake and knows itself. It knows itself. It's recognizing itself. Here it is. This is it. This is it. Everything else is thought. Everything. And kind of like a feeling. This is kind of 3D. So you've got an idea of who you were yesterday, who you're going to be tomorrow, and that's all thought. You've got an idea of who I am, who your mother is, who your son is, and I'm not saying abandon all that, but what is beyond that? What is there beyond that thought? That thought comes and goes, so it's not reality, it's not truth, it's not fixed, it's not what is. It comes and goes. So what is it that doesn't come and go? What is it that doesn't come and go? And this is who you are. This is all there ever is, and this is freedom. It's not about you being a good boy, good girl, good non-binary for tomorrow. It's not about what you did in the past. You're not guilty or shameful or need to fix something. Just right now, right here. Right here, right now. Boo boo, boo 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 boo. And this is the freedom. It's non-conceptual. It's not thought about. It's beyond right and wrong and good and bad and you and me. And it's so still and silent, and yet it's happening. And you, who you truly are, isn't separate from anything that's appearing. You are the appearances. No separation. And this is love. It's not about you being good. This isn't fair. Fairness is a mind thing. It's not like, if I'm a good girl, can I then become enlightened? If you do have that predisposition, you most probably won't listen to me because it'll be too challenging. You can't work yourself to this, and if you do the most meditation and the most prostrations and the most this and that, you will get to this. This is your nature. It's not about behavior. Behavior is something that comes and goes in time. This is what is. It's beyond anything time bound, including your habits and your conditions. It's right here. Oh, it's so free. It's so wonderful. Okay, so I haven't even gotten to the title of the talk yet. I've just been getting myself excited by the beauty of non-duality. And I went off on a bit of a rant about, about the education system. I'm sorry, but if you listen to a dyslexic, they're always going to go on a rant about the education system. The education system for a dyslexic is disastrous. If you have a dyslexic child, not all cases, but more than likely, really look at the education system you're putting them in. It's such cruelty, the education system for a dyslexic. So yeah, so maybe I'm a bit biased. So explore for yourself, don't listen to me. It's just my opinion. Dyslexia is such a gift if it's seen that way and treated that way. It's so beautiful, dyslexia. It's a different functioning of the brain. That's all it is, and it just doesn't learn well in a classroom setting, in a typical way setting. Yes. Anyway, back to the title of the talk. So, what should not be talked about if you are a non-duality teacher? So, what I think particularly should not be talked about if you're a non-duality teacher is the exposing of the person that's speaking the message. So what happens to a lot of people when they're listening to somebody talking about non-duality? Because on one side they're having this awakening, this opening, because they're recognizing something they've always known, this beauty, this freedom. So they're having this opening which contains love. So on one side, that then gets projected onto the non-duality teacher. And then the next thing is that we, most of the time as humans, we have a predisposition to worshipping a leader. It's most probably part of our survival. And then it's also maybe like unacted out parts in ourselves. So if you see things in me which you haven't acted out or you haven't healed, then sometimes it can get projected onto me. And then also teachers that maybe align with your ideas or your ways of being. And all different teachers attract different students, and it's not because of non-duality. And then what happens is a non-duality teacher sometimes, quite often, rides that wave and begins to turn themselves into a figure. I've kind of by default become that. And I can also see where I've played into it as well, but I don't really have a strong urge to play into it, of making myself in some way special. And that is a difficult part, because this awakening that I had was so beautiful and to me was so special, so it's hard to talk about that and not communicate it as something that's special. But it's also like not a bit of a negative thing to do to other people, because then it's like, she has something special that I can get to. And all of this is nonsense. That's in your mind. I am in your mind. Everything you're seeing in me is in your mind. So if you have a non-duality teacher in which you're worshipping, it's a delusion. It's an unhealthy dynamic that maybe can create healthy dynamics in the long run, because you begin to see through that, and through worshipping them, then there's some ideas that get dissolved. But a lot of the time it's not so healthy to do. I don't know the answer to it, because you sit at the front and you express this subject, and then you become the one sat at the front with people watching you, and I don't know how to dissolve that. I think the internet's dissolving it, and something else which might dissolve it, which is really funky, is when we begin to get more online avatars that are realistic. So you could have, like me, I could come on as an avatar and I could change my look every week. Maybe of the same voice, so there could be some sort of recognition. But yeah, how cool would that be? And a lot of non-duality teachers play into it. In one way, I feel like if there's an openness, like everything brings you to freedom, like life brings you to freedom. So if you get involved in this like teacher-student dynamic, everything brings you to freedom. And in another way, I think it can be unhealthy as well. The deed's to be broken, but it'll be broken at your own time. I see it a lot in non-duality. It's also this like looking for a parent figure as well. Like imagining this parent figure that has unconditioned love, that loves you unconditionally. And then also this community, because everybody's lonely. It's like you get involved in this community of people that think the same thoughts. But this can all be dogmatic and get you into like a belief system. Non-duality isn't a belief system. It's not a freaking teacher. It's not rules that you need to follow. It's not prescriptions. These can be helpful to combat old ideas that are in place, but that's not it. Non-duality is this moment. How can you buy that? How can you follow somebody to get that? How can you grasp that with your net? How can someone give it to you? How can you practice your way to this moment? It's your birthright. I love that from Ramesh Balsekar. He always used to say, it's your birthright. It is every being's birthright. This moment. When have you not had this moment? When have you not had this? When have you not been this? The mind keeps looking for something. It's in them. They're going to give it to me. This is going to give it to me. That's going to give it to me. Ooh, 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 ooh. Dancing's going to give it to me. Rock my way to freedom. Tantra's going to give it to me. Not rock my way to freedom, but my way to freedom. Yeah. Just in your game with like the 4-year-old. Mummy, Daddy, how do I be a good boy, good girl, good non-binary? How do I be that? Tell me what I need to do to be good. I want to be good. You are bad. Do you really need to play that anymore? What are you beyond good and bad? And also demonizing me or the next person. Like I just exposed this stuff about what non-duality teachers shouldn't say if you want to speak about non-duality. I forget the title. I just exposed that, but also not demonizing that person. So if it does happen, like that's a creation that has happened that we can look at and say, yeah, that wasn't so healthy, but it's also not demonizing it, because who is this demonization and this victim that you're creating? Who are they? Yeah, there's dynamics that can be victimized, and I'm not trying to deny that. But it's seeing beyond that. What is beyond that? What is beyond that? What is beyond that? Woohoo! Love. That is what's beyond. Love. But don't take it from me. Don't sit there and listen to these beautiful things that I'm exclaiming and then think, oh, yes, that's what I want. That's what I'm going to get, because that will be your illusion too. Yeah, I'm expressing it in the positive, but don't be fooled into this like, oh yeah, she says all these positive things, she's selling it for me. Okay, come on then, let's do that. That's an idea too. I'm not even saying don't do it or don't listen. I'm just saying those are ideas that keep you encaged. If you want to improve yourself on the human level, it's most probably better to go into psychology and go to like a really good psychologist, maybe that even knows about non-duality too. Why? Because that's been proven by science. And you know, a lot of these non-duality teachers, including myself, proclaim all these things, but it's not backed up by science in the majority. So I speak about my experience and what I've witnessed and what I've witnessed happen to people, but I've not like really tested it. But that's what non-duality is about. Non-duality isn't about improving the person. It's about recognizing this moment of what you are beyond the person. This is so mind-fogging for you. Mind-fogging. Who am I? I need to be something. I need to get something. I need to go somewhere. But you're telling me, and then what? Then what? Then what? Then what? Then what? And that's all on the personal level. So there you can go to meditation, you can go to really well qualified, maybe into spirituality psychologist. Or you can go to one-to-one sessions with non-duality teachers, but it's just non-duality teachers normally aren't trained in trauma and all these things, and there is a science to it. Like, you've got to be careful not to stimulate trauma too much. And there is personality disorders and all this baluba. But what non-duality teachers are really good about is pointing radically to this moment. Back from the story. So story, I want to improve, I want to become this. She's better, he's worse. She's better, he's worse. I'm good, bad. And what is beyond that? What is beyond your conceptual reality? What is always here that never leaves? This is the freedom. The mind's like, the teeth chatter. I must be good, must be good. That's your biggest hell, being good. It sounds like a good idea, and it's a good idea on the human level to develop this in our traits, to have a conceptualization of good and empathy. But when you're identified with it, that will be your biggest hell. Because there is no good you, and good is always changing. I mean, like, in order to survive, we have to consume a lot of products. And in consuming those products, we have to take from other things, including animals and the lettuces. And if you didn't know, lettuces are alive. They have little tiny squeaky voices. They're like, help, 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 every time you cut them off. And then chop them up. Help, help, help. Even if you're a vegetarian, the amount of mice that you kill and chop up in the flowers and the fertilizers used. So goodness is a very changeable subject, because what is it that we define as good? We define good as survival. We define good as a society that grows. I can tell you that the tree doesn't think that's good. The more humans that survive, the less trees there are. The tree is like, oh. But then I'm not saying be an asshole or be a murderer. I'm not promoting like negative traits or psychotic or sociopathic traits or narcissistic traits. So who are you? All these blah, blah, blah comes out. What is silence in there? What is? What is? Who? The person, the separate identity that there is identification with, it's always about seeking to become something good. Seeking to become good. Or bad, because you perceive that as good. But it's always about seeking to become something. And then to avoid things. So if you're not good, then there's shame. You don't want to be shameful. You don't want to be guilty. You don't want to be bad. You don't want to be neurotic. You don't want to be anything that's negative. Just notice that identity, and it becomes a feeling in the body. Whereas actually, when you point this way, where is this body? How big or small are you is that sense of self. Your sense of self is no places and all places. When you really go deeply into this moment, it will be seen. This isn't talking about fixing your traumas or not. I still have traumas that I work on. It's not about traumas. It's not about habits or conditions as such. Yes, they will change and improve, but it's about that illusion that those habits, those traumas, those ways of being, your karma is you. The actions of the body makes a you in this moment that's experiencing. There is no you that's experiencing in this moment. There is this moment. I'm just going to speak to my partner 1 second. I'm telling him how wonderful he is. He's the best. He is the best. Okay, so maybe we go to questions now. Otherwise, you might all start to project onto me that I'm a narcissist that loves the sound of my own voice. This is what happens when you cage me down with illness for the last couple of weeks. As you can all guess, I had the big C. And then the big C activated all my allergies, which I had really dissipated in the last years. And, it's April in Europe, so it was like intense pollination of everything. So the big C and full-on allergic reactions to the environment was quite intense. I'm still having to deal with the leakage from the nose. Gleesy has to be washed down every time she comes in the house. I have to go out like I am a criminal, totally covered. Yeah. I didn't expect that to happen. And I would recommend, if you're going to get the big C, get it in winter time if you're prone to allergies. Don't get it in the freaking spring. Yeah, okay, we go to questions. Oh, there's none. You were all so entranced, or maybe it just cut off and there's nobody listening anymore. Okay, so if you want to ask questions, you do throw through Skype. I think it's in the box below. It's Lisa Cairns 12. And and you can ask questions. If you want to call in, please put call me and then nothing else afterwards. Don't just call in, because it's all out of time and out of sync. So put call me and I'll call you when I'm ready. Or you can write your question, whichever you like, into Skype. And if there's nothing in Skype, then I will go to the YouTube chat. So you can then put it in there. But that's the second option. Okay. So Katie Jones. I'm just writing to answered it. Just writing that I answered it. She's not on the stream, but she wrote to me prior. That doesn't always happen if you do that prior. Hi Lisa, I'm not able to join you live today, but hope you may speak to a question I have. Yes, Katie. Thank you, Katie. Basically, I'm wondering what to do with this definition of awakening as an energetic shift as you teach. I know it is being pointed to the presence, the I am, and I have had many glimpses of this, so to speak. I inquire into my experience, but if I'm honest, a lot of the time I do feel like a separate self in this body. It's loosening, but it's still there. For a while this bothered me, but now I just given up on seeking this energetic shift in a way. I think something like, if I feel separate, what to do, that's what is. The person can't really do anything about it. And this giving up helps me feel more peaceful and less seeking, striving. Could you speak about this? I guess a part of me is wondering if I should try harder to inquire. Thank you. Hope this isn't too wordy for the stream. Much love to you. No, it's perfect, Katie, and I really hear what you say. Yeah, and this is the problem with non-duality, and this is why I would love more research done into it, because it's so random as to who has that shift and who doesn't. The other thing that I would like to say about the shift is, for some people, it's something that happens really gradually, so you don't really notice it. And there's some people like myself where it happens quite dramatically, so it's more of a difference. So some people, it's like a fading out of that attachment to self. And some people, it's like a big, oh my God, and a few other select words. So then in teaching it, it's confusing because I can't disclaim my experience, and it is an energetic shift, but it's not necessarily noticeable. So for somebody that I've been speaking to for quite a few years, it happened slowly, and then suddenly they weren't suffering anymore, and then they were like, hang on. They didn't even really recognize what happened, but they just were happy. There was just this absence of suffering, and they'd had many awakenings over many years of studying this. So there's that, and then there's the next part of, like, conceptually what it does listening to speakers like myself and other speakers. And this is the negative side of it. In a way, ultimately, you could say there's no negative and positive. But if we use that language, the negative side about listening to non-duality teachers, especially those that teach about the energetic shift, it sets up this idea of somebody that has this freedom, and then if you follow it, you will get to this energetic shift. And this is a very painful dilemma to get into, because there is a you that unconsciously believes that you're only worthy if you get to this. And then you invest energy into it, believing that you're going to get to it. Yeah, and that's really painful. That's like, it's the same as believing that money will get you the happiness. But at least with money, you can tangibly get it. Whereas this subject, it's not tangible. It's not like that. It's not like you can get coins in your bank and then say, I'm done now. It's like something that happens or not, and it's not definable, and it's not conceptual, and it's not something that you can hold on to and get a certificate and be like, here. Although I do have a friend who was offered a certificate by the Zen monastery, boop, boop, for being enlightened. Yeah. So yeah, it's the problem. I mean, I think about these things and I contemplate it, and I feel sad that part of the way I speak, and it's not just singular to me, but it's to the non-duality community, can lead to this what's that word? This dichotomy of the self, this idea of something they want to arrive at and something that's really invested at, but then also this knowing that it can't get to it. So then the best thing to do, like you say, is to begin to give that up. When I was with Roger, because of the way he spoke, I really gave up on the idea of enlightenment, and it was just being about being happy in every moment, which is about being present, not having pain or pleasure, but just being present to what's happening. Like being in flow, I suppose, or not being in doership like he would speak about. And that was deeply relaxing to me because it was very tangible. And so that's nice that you found relaxation in that concept, so that's great. And I hope that I can expose some of this. And then the other thing that I would say is to work on balancing the personal self. I think that we've spoken before, Katie, and you've worked a lot on balancing the personal self. And what I mean by that is getting a really good conceptualization of your character, of the past, of what happened in childhood, of your attachment wants and needs, of, where you disassociate, traumas, like a really good conceptualization. And then once you've got that, like trying to work on what it is that you want for your life beyond like your suffering patterns. So often we go into situations that recreate our childhood situation because it makes us feel safe, and that's not really what we want. That's just an example of it. And to do that, you have to really work, I think, one-to-one with a person where they can really point things out to you. And I think this will make you happier. It will stop you going into more dead-end situations, being self-destructive. As long as you work with somebody that's good. So somebody that has a good sense of like psychology, and then somebody also that has maybe, if you're lucky enough, a good sense of non-duality and can hold both of those. I don't really do so many one-to-one sessions anymore, but I'd recommend people on my website. Yeah. And then also the other thing that I would recommend is don't get stuck in this cult mentality of non-duality. Explore for yourself, work things out for yourself. Don't rehash what I say or what others say. Find that truth in this being, because everybody has their own truth as a human and as that which is beyond the humanness. And don't get stuck with cult-like teachers. Use them maybe as a springboard to undo things in you, but don't get stuck in like this cult-like, cultic relationship. I see it so often. I got stuck in these relationships with teachers, by my shame, by my guilt, by my belief that other people are better. So it's like, okay, use these teachers to go beyond yourself, but don't get stuck in this, they are the savior, everything they say is true. Find it out for yourself. And then question, what is the self? Boo! Yeah, thanks, Katie, for your question. Excuse me for blowing my nostrils. I'm trying to do it very gently and not being like honk, which is what I want to do. Trying to do it like a lady, as my mum says. So I've always been prone to allergies, and maybe you don't find this funny, but I find this funny. I know I look really prim and proper on YouTube, but if you get to know me in person, I'm kind of like not as prim and proper as I look. Maybe I don't look prim and proper, but my mum is very feminine and very like, she always dresses really well, and she's so super sweet. And and when I go outside, when you've got allergies, you have to adapt. You can't just keep using tissues, because inevitably you run out, and then also you hurt your nose by keep blowing it. So I have this way of blowing my nose without using a tissue when I'm outside, and it doesn't go on my body, it doesn't get stuck anywhere. It's like really ingenious way. I developed it myself. I'm not going to tell you it. You have to pay me $100 to find out how to blow your nose without using a tissue and out getting on yourself. Anyway, we were out for a walk and my mum didn't have a tissue and she needed to blow her nose. And I was like, Mum, I've developed this fantastic way of blowing your nose without using a tissue. And I showed her, and she just looked at me, her mouth began to bend downwards, and she was like, but Lisa, I am a lady. And that always makes me laugh. Whenever we go for a walk, I always think of that. But Lisa, I am a lady. Meaning she won't do it because she's a lady. So she's like... Okay. But Lisa, I am a lady. Yeah. Okay. So. Hey Thomas, nice to see you back. Yeah, and thanks for your message, Thomas. Yeah, it sounds like we had very similar experiences. I kept my taste and smell, but just got hammered by an exacerbation of the allergies. Hey Hassan. Hey Isabel. Oh, nice, Isabel. Danke. Hey Mate. Hi Lisa. What's the difference between the self and the ego? Is it the same thing? So my experience, Mate, is that all teachers speak about these words differently. So you have to let each teacher define their meaning of that. So when I say self, I could mean the character, the habits and the conditions and the karma of the body, which creates a character, but that character is not experiencing. So I could mean that as a self. And then I could mean the true self, which is beyond the character, which is this moment, which is what is, which is love, which is the birthright of all things. And then the ego, I tend not to use the word ego because I had so many teachers that used the word differently that I think I just became a bit numb to it. But actually it's a really great word, and most people mean by ego the attachment to the habits and the karmas and the conditions of the body and believing that character is experiencing. So the ego is the separation. That's what most teachers mean, but not all. So that's the joy of going and listening to all other teachers. You've got to get used to their lingo and try and work it out. It's like a puzzle. We all need to be board certified so we speak the same. That's a joke, obviously. Hey Brian. Hey Lisa. I was in a session with someone going into feelings. There was a lot of energy. Then I started repeating the mantra, I is I, with him, until suddenly I started laughing and totally losing it and I couldn't stop. It's like the laugh didn't even come from me. Then this terror of death and abandonment arose, just like you spoke about in the intro. It just kind of seems to be there now, and I'm unsure how to address it. The fear is there could be a psychotic break by going into it. How would you advise to address this? I'm kind of scared of going back to sessions. Hey Brian, yeah, I don't know what happened in that session, and yeah, I mean, this is a problem, I remember listening to Jung one time. No, I wasn't listening to Jung, that's a lie. It was Jordan Peterson speaking about Jung. And he said, when somebody's being gaslit massively in a relationship and lied to, so like a serious partner relationship, and you come out of that and you realize that the other person has been really seriously lying, and you can no longer determine who that person was and what relationship you had with them, there can be two things that happen. One is that you have a mental breakdown and you end up with mental health issues, or two, you have awakening and go beyond self. I mean, we are playing with fire when we go into this subject. And I can't guarantee what way it will go. I have seen people get into the subject and have mental breaks. Because what it is, I presume, even though everything I say is not scientifically backed, it's my opinion, it's what I've read, it's through studying, it's been involved in this for many, many years and going into myself and exploring. But from my experience, so what you're kind of doing in a way is you're tricking yourself and you're going beyond pain and pleasure. So the person is in this matrix of pleasure and pain, and it believes that pleasure is the answer and pain is the enemy. So pleasure is my freedom and pain is the enemy, and society feeds on that. Everybody is buying into that realm. So we're kind of controlled in a way, but in an invisible way, because we've been taught that pleasure, good, pain, bad. So our whole life is about trying to play this board game where we're moving all our pieces to get the maximum amount of pleasure and the maximum amount of pain and the least amount of pain. And really there's no winners of this, because in the end everyone dies, so everyone has to lose. So everyone eventually goes into immense pain in the death process. But even in life, people around you are going to die, you're going to lose things, you're going to be disappointed, heartbreak, you're going to be a whole variety of things. And there will be those that get half and half, there will be those that get more pleasure and less pain, and there will be those that get more pain and less pleasure. And it's an unfair rolling. You know, in Eastern traditions, they would say it's karmic. But if you take karmic out of being personal, then it's like, yeah, it's just the flow of events in the end. One thing led to another, and then you're here with this body that is having more pain and less pleasure. And that's not a personal responsibility. It's not like somebody's done bad, because who would be that somebody? It's just that these particular events have ended up painful. It's no different from the dog, you know, that gets born and then its mum gets killed and it's starving and abandoned, has to starve to death as a puppy and doesn't ever get a life to experience, you know, experiences. It's just the way it is. And when we look from a bigger perspective, from a bird's eye perspective, we see it as energy transforming. But when we look at it as a more personal experience, like life is deeply unfair. So, and what we're doing in going beyond this is looking beyond this idea of pleasure and pain. So all animals are like moving towards that. Like, so Khaleesi, my dog, is always trying her best to move towards the most amount of pleasure. And all animals are doing that. But the humans believe they are somebody that's doing that. And their sense of self gets embossed, if that's a word, into that. It becomes weaved into the fabric of that idea, their sense of self. And in non-duality, we're kind of tricking ourselves and going beyond that, which is a fascinating concept, because no other animal has done that, has begun to look past the illusion of pleasure and pain. And this is why non-duality is such a dodgy subject to teach, because, you know, I was with teachers, and many teachers teach, you know, going beyond pleasure and pain, and then that can lead into all types of abusive dynamics. You know, if the teacher's not really careful, or clever or wise, then there can be, you know, the teacher does something, or you're in a group that does something that crosses people's boundaries, and then you can say, yes, but that's not your freedom. You've got to go beyond your ego. And this is where it all begins to get dodgy on the human level. But then on the psychological level, we are kind of like short-circuiting the brain in a way. And this is undocumented and unexperimented. There are institutions that are beginning to look into this, but most scientific institutions will only look into things that will make them money, and it's unknown if this will make them money because it's such a far-out concept. And all traditions that are normally talking about enlightenment are based on this. Like, so the Buddha was that suffering is the attachment to pleasure, the clinging to pleasure, and the avoidance of pain. And non-duality would go on to say that makes the sense of self, this attachment to the person and the pleasure and pain dynamic. So it's the collapsing of that. And that's the energetic shift. Yeah, so it's dodgy. Brian says, call me. Just one moment, let me look, because I do often speak to Brian. Let me see what else is going on. Okay, I will call you, Brian. Just let me sort out my tech stuff. Here I go, Brian. I'm coming for you. Here I come. Hang on a second, Brian. I've just got to unmute you. Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I'd just call in, try to make it quick.
Yeah, you're a little bit like a robot today. Have you got a new headset?
Does it sound bad?
It sounds a little robotic. It could be a little bit painful for some ears.
One time. How about now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I was in the session and it just kind of, I don't know if things released. I mean, it felt like it was just a lot of energy, and I was sort of terrified, like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. This is actually crazy. Like, I'm here. I felt like I was in the session with a crazy person as well, It's just um
Yeah,
and it was just like this, but at the same time it's this calling to, like, go all the way. Like
yeah,
it's full on, like, um and I realized that, like, maybe my whole life has been run by this kind of like terror that's like
mm.
low key kind of there. And
Yeah, most probably.
um
But you've also got to find your own intuition. That's hard to say. Maybe that person wasn't the right match for you. You got to but I can't
yeah,
kind of say that, and you can't. Not you. They can't really say it. It's something that you've got to begin to
I mean, yeah,
find and trust.
yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah,
difficult
that's
line.
yeah, I've been going to different, well, like kind of talking to different non-duality teachers and seeing like how it resonates and if it feels safe. And I do try to discard that part of it, like, oh, feeling like safe, or because I'm also kind of like, well, it is gonna bring up stuff, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
it's gonna
so
bring up some stuff, but also, feeling safe has importance too. You're allowed to feel safe.
yeah,
One-to-one session. I mean, in a way, I think that's an important quality
yeah,
to
yeah,
feel
for
safe.
sure,
You've
for
got to
sure.
build a relationship up where there's mutual trust. But it's also so exposing going into a one-to-one session. That does, take time.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
would happen if you said to them, "I feel unsafe"?
Um, well, they might be like, go towards the kind of, that's an illusion. That's a, or I don't know. I don't
Right.
really know. You know,
Yeah.
I did, I felt that I would love to do sessions with you. I know you're not available right now. Um, but I am trying to like scour like through different,
Yeah.
teachers and kind of find like, a happy medium where it's not like, um, you know, it seems like extreme non-duality. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it is good to go beyond this fear. It's just,
I would
you know, this
say
I
maybe
afraid.
maybe it's most important thing is to find what's right for you. But what you said, which I would just jump on, is like trying to find this balance between pushing you beyond your limits, but also this place where you feel safe. That sounds like a really balanced attitude. So that sounds really good that you're looking
Yeah.
for that. And that's something that you've come to as well.
Yeah.
Like that feels like something I want as well.
Yeah. Yeah. True, true. Yeah. So now I'm just wondering, like, how can I, address this in my day to day? It's like yesterday, it was just, I kind of felt like in love and
Yeah.
in bliss, like a little bit. And then today, I just kind of feel, resistant and a little bit terrified
Yeah.
of
I
going
wouldn't I
into
wouldn't
the,
pay
it's
too much
just,
in regards to non-duality. I wouldn't pay too
yeah,
much to the too much attention to these different things. Like this happens, like this opening and closing. This more open state where you feel more love, and then this closed state. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. It's more just focusing on what's happening in this moment. Like, so there's two
yeah,
things that are seemingly happening. There is this immense space of everything, this I amness, this beingness that is everything and all places. So that's happening. And then there also is this human that has its whole vulnerable world of feeling. And that's also part of what's happening. So you've got this beingness, which is beyond good and bad, right and wrong, positive and negative, that's all around. And then you've got the human that feels something. So the human, what did you describe the human feeling today? Like tight and contracted?
Yeah, a little bit terrified. That's
So
kind of
you've got this,
subsiding now,
yeah,
so it's not even real, maybe.
yeah. I mean, that's a big question, what is real and what is not, but it's
Well,
seemingly
yeah, it just
appearing.
comes and goes.
Like, so you've got this, like, person that is a little contracted or sad or terrified in this massive space of beingness. And that's the end of story, really. Like, that's it. Like, we can then explore what's happening in the human world. So you can go into time and explore it, the relation to it in the past and the future and all these different things. But in this moment, there is these two different things, and forget all this becoming and wanting and yesterday and not. What's your actual experiences? This person with this terror and these maybe what we'd call negative feelings, and there is this immense freedom in which it's peering in, and that's the most important part. And then you can do exercises where there is like more attention on the absolute. So, like he was saying to you, I am, or whatever it was that he was saying.
Yeah.
And then you can do exercises which is exploring more the human dynamic, which goes into time. And neither is right or wrong. I would say, like, both have qualities. I wouldn't spend more time in one than the other, but so I wouldn't get stuck in just the personal or just the absolute. And it's not
Yeah.
about you getting enlightened or you getting somewhere. It's just about the exploration of your experience. And in that, there will be change that happens. More than likely for the positive. I can't guarantee that. Like, I haven't done any scientific experiments, but like the exploration of the person is a positive thing. And then the knowing of that which is beyond the person is a positive thing. So having a good conceptualization of you and kind of coming to know what's being felt there. So, if there's like lots of hatred thoughts coming up, it's like a knowing of fear or anxiety underneath it. So kind of having good conceptualization. Right. And then also this I am, which is not a thing and not a place or an idea, this beingness which is beyond you. And both of them are happening now. Like right now, there is this no place that's all places. There is this moment happening. It's not happening. Could you agree with that?
Yeah.
There is this happening. And then there might be an idea that it's happening to me, but that's an idea appearing in this no place, which is all places. This nothing appearing to everything. There is a person that thinks it's experiencing and has feelings of negativity. But all of that is appearing in this vastness of who you are, which is infinite. And that's always here, this infinite nature. And it's not to discount the discomfort that happens in the person. I get discomfort. Yesterday I had some immense discomfort because I accidentally overdosed on some medication, which counteracted each other. And and I had a bit of a tantrum at my partner, like so, then passed out. Well, not literally passed out, but like kind of just fell into a very deep sleep. Like so, it's not about not having these human experiences, but there is this immenseness that's behind it, which has been veiled and covered. That's always free.
Yeah. I mean, it feels simultaneous with, the discomfort.
And then the discomfort is like, inherently in this discomfort is like a urge to get away from it. So there is the fear, and there's this urge, the seeking urge, which makes your experience more narrower. So when there's seeking, there's more of a narrow experience. This urge, I've got to get away from this, I've got to get away from this. And that's not pathological, that's a response happening to pain. And then a belief that the solution is getting away from it. So it's just noticing all of that that's happening, all these complexities.
Yeah. I kind of try to use my mom as a way to go into it, because I tend to avoid her, and now I just try to fully just listen and feel everything that she says. And I feel like it's a reflection of my psyche and like how I've been raised.
Yeah, fascinating, eh?
So that, so that I don't know if it works or not, but I'm really trying to face things, but yeah, it's non-linear, it seems, it's just like I go from one thing to another, so, and I'm trying to be consistent about it. It is what you say, though, is true. It is hard to do um individually, and it's nice to think that and maybe I can, but like, it's nice to think that I can. But yeah, it's tough to see everything. Though I do get the reflections back from, like from my mom, for example, like, oh, you're doing this, but I don't know if it's true or not, of course. I don't know. But yeah, it's really good to hear this, and I really appreciate speaking to you. I'll give you some more time to answer questions and stuff, though, and not
Thanks,
take up the
Brian.
whole. Really, really thank you.
Yeah, and
Lisa.
I will answer your email. I know that you emailed me. I just have just been a bit out of it the last few days.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Bye.
See ya.
Good afternoon, Lisa. Glad to feel you're better. Hey, Beth. Lovely to hear from you. Yeah, thanks for your well wishes. It's been a bit up and down, though, so I might go down again tomorrow. Thanks, Mate. It also depends what is pollinating. Glenn, nothing happened. Each of us is on a lonely imaginary journey through the effects of having judged against eternity. Blame is painful, and while you insist on holding it, you continually use your mind to project pain onto your body. An ego cannot hear this, but you are not an ego, and you deserve to be released from pain. Hope Johnson. Hey, Glenn, or Johnson, whoever is speaking there. Yeah, beautiful. I think depends a little on how you're meaning that, but yeah, it's every being's birthright, the freedom. Marika, hi, lovely Lisa. Hey, lovely Marika. Sorry, it's not us, sorry, it's Mariki. Ever since I lost my identification a few weeks ago, I feel like many people are taking advantage of the state I am in without really understanding it. Nobody seems to get it, not even my spiritual friend. I feel tired. Can you please kindly enlighten me about why this is happening? I don't know, why that's happening. I don't know why that's happening unless we spoke in depth about it. I'm not sure I could really point on anything, but I can speak less specifically. Maybe something comes to mind. So, firstly, what is the need to talk to anyone about it? Like, do you need to explain it to anybody? I know the feeling and the urge to, because it's nice to be seen and to be understood by others. But with the knowledge that they don't understand now, is it okay to not explain it to them? Because the thing is when something really beautiful happens to anybody, if you try to push that and tell that onto somebody else, it's more than likely going to activate their shame, and then they'll feel bad. So, it's the nature of anything. So if you won $1 million, you wouldn't really talk to people about it. Maybe you would, and then you'd realize that it's not so good to talk to people about it. So it's like, do you really need to talk about it? And people taking advantage of it, if somebody feels good from feeling another person's energy, I'm sure they're going to be more attracted to it. So it's also having empathy and understanding that if you feel really free and the other person picks up on that, then of course they're going to be like, yeah, baby, yeah, want more of that. It's the nature of the person. And then just see if there's any like attachment still there. So awakening happens, and then there can still be old seeking patterns. So are you going into old stories of people taking advantage of me or anything? Like I still have old seeking patterns coming up. It's like the body is used to behaving in that way. I'm just struggling to think of any seeking a pattern right now. Yeah, I can't think of anything. Okay, sorry. Forget. We move on. I'm like a blank slate. Come to talk about myself, and then I'm like... Jack. Last question. Fantastic. Oh, in Skype, it's the last question. That's fantastic because it fits with the time. I always like to do 2 hours. And I've so enjoyed speaking to you today. Even though I'm bunged up like a sewage. No, that's not the right saying. It's like bunged up like a like sewage. Like a toilet? No. What would be good for that? Bunged up like a sewage. And just yesterday, I was in quite the state. And I can't open the windows or go outside. It's just really beautiful speaking with you. Yeah. It's such a joy speaking about non-duality. I just hope that I do a good enough job like communicating the essence of non-duality and not getting too stuck in my personal dogma, because every human will have dogma. Like you heard me go off on one about the education system. It doesn't mean that that's bad or wrong, but it's just not the truth. You know, when you're giving ideas or opinions, it's just ideas and opinions. And some have more validity and some have less, and then we change the stakes and it all changes, and then ideas progress and grow. That's the beauty of ideas. And I just hope that I can stick to the subject enough for you to really get flavour of that which is beyond you. And I really hope that none of you get stuck on my dogma. Let me just look up the word dogma. I hope I'm using it correctly. Sometimes I don't always use words correctly. Dogma. Oh, it's a film, is it? What does dogma mean? Something held as an established opinion, especially a definite authoritative tenet, a code of such tenets, geological dogma, a point of view or tenet put forth as authoritarian without adequate grounds. I tend not to be authoritarian, but maybe just because I'm speaking on this, it gives that impression. But yeah, pop all those balloons of any teacher you have. Non-duality is beyond all those balloons of thought. Pop, 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 pop. Okay, so last question. Hi Lisa, can you go into the relationship between non-dual awareness and the brain? I hear all the time that this is not a mental act, but it seems like there are effects on the brain and on the character when enlightenment happens. It also seems like certain drugs can induce non-dual insights temporarily. If that's true, why do people always say that it isn't an event and you can't make it happen when it seems like the opposite is true? I know, Jack. I don't have all the answers to this. I just have my opinions. I feel like what happens when you take certain hallucinogenic drugs, which I do not recommend to anybody because that would get me into serious trouble, that unless it's legal in your country, that when you take hallucinogenic drugs, it breaks the attachment to the seeking and to this idea of you. And so then through breaking that attachment, there is a seeing of something that's beyond you. Yeah. So it does seem in one way connected to the brain. And maybe one day scientists really explore it and find an area in the brain. But my opinion on it in this very moment, which is up for changing and will, so if you watch a video from 5 years ago, I'll have a different opinion because I evolve on opinions, is that, scientists haven't even really got a sense of what mental illness is. Now, if you really study prescription drugs and what they believe is happening in the brain, there is so many don't knows. They have ideas about things, but it's not proven. And they don't even know where thoughts are, and they can't even find thoughts. Isn't that fascinating? And there's even been instances where people have had transplants and then they have the thoughts of the other person. So it's not necessarily in the brain. So there are so many don't knows about this. And it's really not something you can do. Like, even if it is in the brain or if it is in the body, this switch that stops this seeking or this identification, we don't know where it is and we can't find it, and we can't personally go in there and unswitch it. A lot of teachers claim that you can, but it seems like it's so different for everybody. Go with your flow and what you feel is right for you. But if there was one path, then it would be the $1 million idea if we could find that. But if scientists don't even really know where we think, they don't even really know what mental illness is, and they haven't mapped the whole entire brain, and there are so many mysteries that they don't understand, then how the hell is like a meditation exercise or something that we say going to get you to go into that specific place to undo it? There does seem to be some correlation between questioning this you, which is based on seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, and that's where a lot of the religions come into, but we can't find it. There is a really cool video on YouTube, and I'll try and put it on my website, and maybe I'll try and link it down here, of this guy that studied the brain and thinks that it's about like overriding these pleasure pain areas in the brain, and then by going past it, you leave them open or something, and then it kind of dismantles the sense of self. And he did a lot of experiments, scientific experiments, but basically all of this is unknown, and basically I don't know. If I had the answer, I would give it all to you. All I know is that I can speak about non-duality, and there can be a knowing of what's being talked about, and there can be an opening in that. So I know that from my experience and from watching people. That's one thing I know. And then another thing I know is that questioning our boxed in beliefs is really healthy if it's done in a way which isn't about trying to control someone or get someone to follow your group and to build up a whole cult around you, which I just would like to say I do not do. I try my best not to socialize with people that come to my talks too much, and not to befriend them, and not to have like an inner circle of a group around me, because I know the dangers of it. It's not that I don't want to. Like, people that come to my talks are so brilliant and open-minded, and I think, wow, you could be such a cool friend. But I know the dangers of that and what it's led to, and I've really studied the mentality of cults and the difficulty of religions and the teacher that's teaching things. And so my best way of doing it is just speaking over the internet and keeping it very separate from my life. Blah, blah, blah. She goes on and on and on, and non-duality is just this. That's it. This moment right here, right now. and go beyond anything I say. Challenge anything I say in your mind. Don't let it become your belief system, your religion. That's not it. I'm just here to open doors in your imagination. That's all I want to do. My philosophical side just wants to do that. My curiosity side, my creative side wants to do that. And then the other side is pointing out the divinity of what you always have been. What have you always been, which is your inherent birthright, which you never lost, which is always here. It's always holding you. It's always embracing you. It will never leave you or abandon you. It's not a thing, a place, an action, an idea. Yes. But das ist genug. Ich habe viel gesprochen. Ich habe viel gesprochen. Yeah. Beth, like a blocked, like a traffic jam. Oh, that's brilliant, Beth. Like a blocked drain. I am blocked up like a traffic jam. I like that one. Thank you. I think you've got a very creative mind, Beth. I've always thought that whenever I've spoken to you, that you can go off into whole different worlds very quickly. You were the only one who replied to that and took me up on that game. Marikai. Thank you, very helpful answer. By the way, you're my favourite non-duality speaker. What you say is profound. Oh, that's sweet. Okay, now enough. Enough. I just want to say thank you to everyone that's participated and asked questions and been vulnerable. Yeah. And that I really, really, from the bottom of my endless heart, wish you everything. Everything. Not just one thing or two things or three things, but every goddamn thing. Yeah. Danke.